picking it up from our.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the candidate forum for the 42nd New York State Senate District. I'm Ray Pucci. I'm president of the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of my board of directors and also on behalf of the Sullivan County Chamber that's partnering with us this morning on this event, welcome to this very important and I hope informative next hour. With us, let me introduce to you our candidates. Joining us this morning is Senator Jen Metzger and the challenger, Michael Martucci. And I want to thank Jen and Mike for joining us this morning. We are recording this morning's event, and as soon as, or soon after the event's conclusion, we will be posting it to the Chamber's Facebook page, and I'm sure Jamie will be doing the same for the Sullivan County Chamber, and we'll also have it on our YouTube channel. So you can watch that and share that with your friends. Just a couple words as to the format. Each of the candidates will have 5 minutes for a opening remark or introduction, followed by a series of round robin questions that business owners throughout the region have forwarded to us. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond to that question. Both candidates will be able to answer the same question. And then to conclude, we will have 5 minutes from each candidate for a summary statement. Before we started this morning, the two candidates, we had a process where the candidates got to choose who goes first, and I'm not sure if she won or lost, but Senator Jen Metzger will be making our first opening remark. Jen?
Thank you so much, Ray. Good morning. And I want to thank you and Lillian Brown and the Delaware County Chamber for hosting this forum, and thank the Sullivan County Chamber, Jamie, and all its members for their partnership in it. The 42nd Senate District spans 2,400 beautiful square miles of the Catskills and Hudson Valley. And it's been my great honor and joy to represent our communities these last 2 years. I ran for office in 2018 because I felt like people weren't getting the opportunities that they should, and that the needs of our small towns and our rural communities were being neglected in Albany, and that our state representatives were more interested in who was giving them money than who they represented. Since taking office last year, I've hosted over 45 community roundtables, resource fairs, and town halls around the district, and have held mobile office hours at 40 different locations around the district. And this is because I believe it's so important to meet people where they are to address their needs and make sure that I can best advocate for our communities. In Albany, I've seen 29 of my bills signed into law in the 20 months I've been in office. All of them passed with wide bipartisan support. I can't emphasize enough, what matters is results, not party labels or politics. My main concern in these last 7 months has been to help people get through this challenging time in the midst of a pandemic and economic slowdown. My office has been working nonstop to help thousands of people navigate the red tape to get assistance they need. We continue to get calls every day from people who need assistance. We will get through this, and we have to build back our local economy stronger and in a more resilient way. In my first term, I've brought new programs and funding to the district for needs as diverse as mental health support for our veterans, municipal broadband, recreational trail expansion, and local investments in water infrastructure, roads, and emergency services. With some 2,000 farms in our district, most of them small and family owned, it's been my great privilege to serve as chair of the Agriculture Committee in the State Senate and to work with our farms and farm organizations to keep farming strong in New York. I live in the Rondout Valley, where my husband and I have been raising our 3 sons. Family farms here date back many centuries, and I know how important our farms are to our economy and to the character and quality of life of our region. During my first term, I've introduced nearly 20 bills to support our farms. 8 of these have been signed into law to date. In this session, the Senate passed my bill to double the farm workforce retention tax credit and make it permanent, which was a top Farm Bureau legislative priority. This past month, we saw 2 other bills I sponsored in the Senate signed into law. One of these ensures that farmers negatively affected by COVID-19 don't lose their agricultural property tax assessments due to reduced sales. The other, signed in time for the fall holiday season, provides marketing assistance to promote products produced on New York farms for holiday celebrations. And here, I've got my pumpkin right here, purchased locally, which me and my kids are going to be carving tonight, hopefully. A big focus of mine has been to expand markets and opportunities for farms and businesses in our state. The legislature passed my bill, which is now law, establishing the framework for New York's hemp and CBD industry, which provides new opportunities for farmers, manufacturers, and retail businesses in our district and across the state. The state of Florida has actually looked to our law as a model for them. I've also introduced legislation to expand farm to school, and I want to go even further and create farm to hospital and farm to nursing home programs so that our most vulnerable residents have nourishing foods produced by our own farms. This is an incredibly tough time, but we have so much going for us in our region, and I look forward to continuing this work together to build a strong, vibrant, and resilient local economy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, thank you. Mr. Martucci, 5 minutes to you.
Good morning. Well, again, first, thanks to you and your team and the great collaboration to put this event on. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak to your membership. My name is Mike Martucci. I'm a lifelong resident of Orange County. Grew up here in Orange County, went to school here in Orange County, went to SUNY Orange, and eventually went to only as far as Marist College in Poughkeepsie. My wife, Erin, and I are raising our 3 small children here in Orange County. My son, Michael Jr. is 5 years old, Elizabeth's 3, and Catherine, our youngest, just turned 1 last week, in fact. So we have a very young family, and certainly the challenges of staying at home over the last several months were not missed on my wife and I. But look, so as I said, I grew up here in Orange County and went to school at Marist College, and I graduated just about the worst time you could ever graduate with a business degree, which was 2008. Our graduates and college graduates in particular in 2008 faced many of the same challenges that the college graduates today face with respect to the job market. So in 2008, not really having the ability to find a job, I had gone out and took a pretty big risk. I think a risk that so many people here with us this morning have taken. And I took up all the money that I had saved and bought 1 school bus. And from that first school bus, started a school bus company, primarily based here in Orange County. So as I said, at 22, I had taken my life savings and bought a school bus. And just as soon as I had enough money saved up to buy a second school bus, I did that. And my grandmother, who was retired, was my very first employee, and came to the company and worked with me. I always joke, in fact, I don't know that I can call her an employee because I didn't even pay her anything, but she was always there to support me, as every good grandmother is. And over the 10 years to follow, I had built the business from that first school bus to a business of over 550 employees with 4 locations stretched across the region, mostly in Orange County. One of the reasons that I'm running is because I've been in your shoes and I know exactly what it's like to do business in the state of New York. And doing business in the state of New York is challenging. That's certainly nothing that comes as a surprise to anyone here who has a business. And certainly COVID has just magnified the challenges of doing business in New York in such a considerable way. And I see the things that are going on in Albany, and I know that this state is headed in the wrong direction. We are at the absolute edge of a fiscal cliff in this state that's been a long time coming. And soon, New Yorkers will be faced with shouldering even more burdens and even greater burdens. And, as I said, I've been in your shoes. I understand what it's like to manage skyrocketing year-over-year healthcare costs. I know what it's like to manage absolutely oppressing state regulation. I know what it's like to struggle every day with an outdated and broken small business tax code that absolutely crushes opportunity and guts opportunity for folks here that are struggling to keep businesses, especially at a difficult time like this. What I know is that change can happen because other states have done this. It's possible, it can be done. And the role of our state and the role of our legislators is to devise policy that helps our small businesses be successful, because government doesn't create jobs, business does. You do, innovators. So one of the big reasons I sit here is because I know what it's like to face the challenges that you face, and I know how government can help in terms of not only preserving and protecting the businesses that we have here, but attracting new businesses for the future. So I thank you all for the opportunity to be here this morning. I look forward to chatting about questions.
Well, thank you both. Our first question. We're getting a little feedback there. Our first question goes to Jen Metzger. Senator, housing has been perhaps one of the biggest challenges that we face here in rural counties, particularly in Sullivan and Delaware, maybe even more so here in Delaware County because of the influence of the New York City watershed. The cost of developing housing and lodging is inflated due to heightened environmental compliance. The housing shortage has caused also an opportunistic shift from affordable long-term residences to expensive short-term rentals, which has made the situation even more difficult. Employers across our region say that they have jobs but can't find workers. Wage earners say that, and particularly young people, say that they would settle down here but can't find an affordable place to live. What do you each see as a way to approach this problem?
Thanks, Ray. And that's a very important issue that you raise. And I held a round table in Sullivan County on youth and employment opportunities, and basically how do we keep our youth here. And it brought all kinds of stakeholders together, our local college representatives, local business leaders, youth themselves, young people themselves, sort of all the stakeholders. And one of the top issues that were brought up was the housing, the ability to get a place to live that they can afford, when you're first starting out in your career. Before coming into the state Senate last year, I served in local government for 10 years in my town, and this was a big issue for us as well. We actually revised our zoning. There are interesting zoning tools you can use. We created economic incentive zones to encourage reuse of properties that were underutilized, abandoned, and we actually encouraged this new zoning law actually encouraged and attracted new investment in multifamily housing, and we pushed for setting aside, making sure that at least 10% of that was affordable housing. And so there are tools you can do at the local level that I know work and I've seen work. And I think we need to support communities in adopting those land use tools. In terms of the short-term housing pressures. I know that all too well. I've seen it in my own community, and we've seen, we want to be able to keep our residents here, and we need long-term rental options. I personally think that, keeping short-term rentals to owner-occupied properties is a good thing that would reduce that pressure. It's something communities have to decide for themselves. I think it's not something the state can impose. Every community is different, but those tools are available at the local level. And I think that at the state level, we have to encourage, support, and incentivize housing opportunities. Just lastly, and we'll get to this later, a top priority of mine has been to restructure how we fund schools in New York State. We way over rely on property taxes. We have to increase the state share, reduce the local share, and that will make housing more affordable.
Mr. Martucci, the same question to you.
So as a business owner, I completely understand the plight. I mean, my number one challenge running my business each day was finding a sufficient number of qualified people to come in and complete the work. One example I point to often is, as part of owning a school bus company, the effort was to hire qualified school bus mechanics to work on vehicles. And to find a qualified diesel mechanic is a very difficult thing to do. There are really no trade programs or schools that are available in the region that provide those sorts of training opportunities. And as you call out, so many of our young people just simply don't stay here because they can't afford to live here. And I think it really points to a bigger issue, which is an absolute affordability crisis that this state has that's a long time coming. And it's hitting our rural communities in a tremendous way. From absolutely overbearing property taxes to the shortfall of affordable housing, as you point out. And I think when you look at affordable housing, one of the particular issues in the area is the fact that there are absolutely crushing environmental regulations that kill opportunities for developers who have or might have the ability to create that housing in the region. So I think the first thing that we need to do as a state is take a look at those regulations, and really analyze if each of those regulations provides some sort of public benefit in terms of protecting our environment, because as you call out, so much of the property in your region, isn't controlled locally. So I think that the priority needs to be getting the tools in place so that developers have the opportunity to create housing that's needed to keep our young people affordable housing and affordable rentals. And then second, parlaying that into the ability to match opportunities, job opportunities, with folks who can live here. Because again, as an employer, I know all too well that, oftentimes it's not having the economic opportunity, the business opportunity to employ someone because that exists, but just simply the talent that's not there.
Thank you. Next question pertains to cell phone service. The recent public-private partnership here in Delaware County to expand broadband service to underserved communities has largely been a great success. However, here in Delaware County and in Sullivan County, the lack of reliable cell service is actually more of a problem for residents, for business owners, and for visitors. Cell service providers are slow to act due to long payback periods to expand service into a sparsely populated area. In the meantime, Delaware and Sullivan counties both continue to fall behind in technology compared to other areas. Why do you think this is not being addressed, and how would you solve this problem? And that first response goes to you, Mr. Martucci.
Thanks. So look, the reason it's not being addressed is because it really hasn't been prioritized in a serious way. And that's the obligation that we have starting now and moving forward. I think of one item that I've been speaking pretty strongly about, which are changes that were made here in 2019 that were supported by Senator Metzger that drive up the cost of expanding broadband networks in the state of New York. And just make it simply more difficult for us to expand these technologies into rural areas. With so many students studying from home and so many individuals working from home or remote locations today, again, this issue has been highlighted in a tremendous way. And in particular, what I'm talking about is the fiber tax that taxes installers that literally put a shovel in the ground in the state's right of way, which is an important piece that is necessary to build out these infrastructures in the state of New York. So I support immediately repealing this fiber tax, because that's the first step in fixing the problem. We need to get New York State out of the way in terms of the issue. The state has actually put obstacles in place that make it more difficult for us to address these issues. The second is it simply has to be prioritized from a budget standpoint. Again, in the past several years, we haven't had state money allocated to expanding broadband networks in the state of New York. That needs to happen, and that needs to happen now. A budget speaks to priorities, and the fact of the matter is, despite studying the issue at great length, and despite spending tremendous amounts of time talking about it, it's time that real resources go there to really address these issues.
Ms. Metzger, to you, same question.
Thank you, Ray. So I have to, first of all, disagree with my opponent that we should get the state out of the way to make broadband happen. And actually, Delaware County will have really the gold standard of fiber optic service that was part of the Broadband for All initiative that was launched by the state in 2015. And I just have the highest regard for the Rural Electric Cooperative and the local telephone companies that are rolling this out and making this happen in Delaware County. Sullivan County got the short end of the stick in that initiative, and there are still huge gaps there and huge gaps around the state. And so broadband is important, cell is important. Both issues are really still important, right, for statewide. And I was very, very happy that my comprehensive broadband bill was passed nearly unanimously by the state legislature. And now we need the governor to sign it into law. Cell service is often it's tied to broadband service, right? We can't have hotspots, for instance, without cell service. Cell service is a huge separate problem from broadband, separate but related. And I was actually on a task force, a governor's task force, at the end of last year, to look to address the cell service huge problem in our state, and got them to focus. I think I saw Assemblywoman Gunther on this meeting today. She was on that task force too, and we got them to focus specifically on the Catskills. And not only that, the roads they were looking at and evaluating service on were completely wrong. We ground truthed it and got them to greatly expand the roads to be covered by a cellular service project. So, the hope was that would be part of this year's budget, but unfortunately, a pandemic happened. And we had huge fiscal uncertainty, and we couldn't add new programs to the state budget this year, but it continues to be a priority. And I've been totally out there up front, like making sure that our Catskills communities are getting the attention they need in any state initiative. Thank you, Rick.
Got it. Thank you. And Senator, this question starts with you. As the pandemic was gaining ground in March, the state legislature granted emergency powers that permitted the governor to temporarily suspend laws or to even create new ones. It also ceded full budget control to the executive branch. Now, while COVID-19 remains a real problem, the threat of the virus overwhelming our healthcare network has been greatly diminished. When do you think the legislature should claim its constitution or reclaim its constitutional authority, and what steps will you take to advance that process?
So first of all, the legislation that granted that authority that we passed, as the pandemic was surging, that legislation was passed with wide bipartisan support. It extended this that power through this year, recognizing that a pandemic is not resolved overnight. And the reason this power was extended is because in a state of emergency, you need to be able to make decisions nimbly and flexibly. And the legislative process is just, it's not a nimble, flexible process. And it's largely driven by public health officials, and that's what we've seen. That's what's been happening in New York State. We are not out of the woods. I have to tell you, my oldest son goes to school at SUNY Binghamton, which is seeing, it's a huge increase in COVID positive cases. I'm very concerned about that community and the rest of our communities in Orange and elsewhere that are seeing an uptick. So we are not out of the woods. But what I want to say is, one, we did not cede budgetary authority. Any proposed cuts have to come before us. We have to review them. If we want to change things, we have to come up with the ways to provide the revenue to prevent those cuts. And I have been very strongly advocating for things like mobile sports betting, a tax on stock buybacks, revenue raisers that will protect our middle class, working families and small businesses and prevent major cuts. So we have met in session and passed numerous COVID-related bills, including my bill to expand access to affordable telehealth, which has been hugely important. That was signed into law. And that's in Albany. At home, it's been like around the clock working to help my constituents directly navigate all the challenges they're facing, small businesses, employees, families, everyone. So we have in no way ceded our power. We are working hard. And when it's appropriate to end that authority, we'll certainly do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martucci, the same question to you.
So while I understand, the importance of the governor being nimble in the height of the pandemic, what's happening in New York right now is certainly not democracy. And I don't know, how anyone can defend a position that what's happening here is the way that state government's supposed to function. I mean, effectively right now in the state of New York, one person is running the entire state government. When you look at what's been happening, especially over the months to follow the initial surge of the pandemic, we've seen nothing but a lack of communication from Albany, a set of arbitrary rules that has picked winners and losers with respect to what businesses can open, what businesses can't, when those businesses can open, when those businesses cannot. We've seen a lack of communication. I had the opportunity to meet with a business owner this week that indicated that their business had submitted a safety plan and received absolutely no feedback on it. We see a water park in Sullivan County that's still closed because of a lack of guidance from Albany with respect to how that water park could potentially open. We see issues here in Orange County and other parts of the district where movie theaters still are not open. So these arbitrary rules and lack of communication have been devastating to our businesses. With respect to the state's budgetary process involves the legislature. In fact, it's the primary job of the legislature, and the legislature has handed over all responsibility to an unelected bureaucrat in the governor's budget director to manage this process, and has taken only a reactionary role. Look, the legislature restoring its powers is long overdue. It should have happened months ago. We send our legislators to Albany to lead and to represent the voices of the people in a region, and that's simply not what's happening. And that's happening at the expense of our residents and our business owners.
Thank you. And Mr. Martucci, this next question starts with you. A recent survey conducted by the New York chapter of the National Federation of Independent Businesses, NFIB, reports that 90% of New York small businesses have been impacted by the pandemic, and 87% have experienced a decline in sales. How would you plan to support efforts to defend small businesses from the consequences of state and federal emergency actions, including measures to freeze unemployment insurance experience ratings, passing good faith liability protections, prevent workers' compensation cost increases, and create tax credits or grant programs to assist small businesses with COVID-19 related capital costs.
So Ray, first, one of the things I'm tremendously proud of is having the support and the endorsement of the NFIB. As I had said in the beginning, I've been in your shoes before. I know exactly what this is like, and certainly, again, COVID has magnified this in a tremendous way. So here are some big things that I support. First, our state has a tremendously broken workers' compensation system. And when you look at the workers' compensation system, it is so important right now to protect our small business owners from claims that are going to result from COVID. It's necessary because as it is, we face some of the highest workers' comp rates in the country. We absolutely cannot shoulder a dime more. Second, with respect to the unemployment experience ratings, as an employer, I dealt year over year with experience ratings that charged more and more money to our state unemployment insurance, including special assessments that would pop up here and there because unemployment was mismanaged by our state. So our state's fiscal mismanagement ended up costing my business and all of your business so much money. So I absolutely support holding harmless our businesses with respect to their experience ratings for state unemployment insurance, because again, this cost of unemployment from COVID cannot be shouldered by our state small businesses. Third, our small businesses absolutely need hold harmless protections with respect to COVID, from their customers. I mean, our businesses, if they're following the guidance of the state and have put reasonable precautions in place, shouldn't have to worry each day. Our business owners shouldn't have to wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares that they're going to be sued, for someone having come in their business and contracting this terrible virus. Lastly, with respect to your question, how do we support small businesses right now? I believe that IDAs and LDCs do tremendous work in terms of helping support small businesses in their communities. Albany is completely out of touch. Albany has no idea what small businesses in our communities need to be successful. So I support a plan that takes wasted economic development dollars, billions of dollars at the Albany level, and pushing them down to local IDAs and local LDCs so that those organizations can come up with small business grant programs or low interest loan programs to help our businesses survive. Because if we don't do something and we don't do something fast, we will not recognize a Main Street anywhere in the state of New York.
Thank you. Senator Metzger, the same question to you.
Thank you. On a related point, I just want to bring up that one of the many COVID-related pieces of legislation that we passed in the legislature that has been very active during this pandemic is enabling IDAs to offer loans of up to $25,000 to small businesses if they needed to help them with PPE and other supplies during this challenging time. Look, our small businesses have been devastated by this pandemic and by the economic contraction, and they continue to face major challenges. We have to do everything we can to support them and make sure that they can persevere through this time. I want to point out that, first of all, our unemployment insurance, thank God we have that program in place, because thousands of families would not have enough food to eat without it. And we had actually, for the first time ever, through a federal program, we were able to help small business owners directly during this time too. And my office helped connect many small business owners, independent contractors, with the assistance that they needed. We have to do everything we can to support our small businesses. I have, even before this pandemic, I have felt that the way, I just came into office last year. I've long been critical of how the state government has focused its economic development dollars, spent millions and millions of dollars on these huge projects funneling millions of dollars to big corporations like Medline, when they should be providing funds to our small businesses who are the ones employing people in our communities, who are from our communities, who are the backbone of our local economies. And these grants to our small businesses can go far, a long way. So I would like to see us completely restructure the way. This is an opportunity now with this. We're at this kind of critical juncture in state policy and in our economy with the pandemic, and we need to shift our focus to business retention, building linkages among our businesses to create a really strong, integrated regional economy. There's a lot of opportunity there. Thank you.
Thank you. While we're speaking about economic development, earlier this year, and this question starts with you, Senator Metzger. Earlier this year, Industrial Development Agency funding was included within the definition of prevailing wage and prevailing wage regulations. Would you each tell us what is your position on prevailing wage requirements as they relate to both IDA funded projects and the geography structure that keeps Delaware, and I believe Sullivan, in line with prevailing wage rates paid in New York City?
So prevailing wage rates should reflect where they are, the local economies. But prevailing wage rates ensure that people have a livable and fair wage, and I'm supportive of it, but they have to make sense, and I will keep it at that.
Mr. Martucci, your answer to that question. Same question to you.
Well, one of the challenges is, Ray, and I think you bring it up, is that the big question here is, does the current process make sense? And certainly I know some of the concerns of the folks on this Zoom are things like the method by which prevailing wage is calculated. It's something that is not really known to me, and probably not known to any of you either. I think that that's a particular challenge with respect to the issue. I mean, look, certainly from my perspective, if public money is being used on a project, we want to see that to go to a greater public good. And in many cases, that is used to make sure that we support living wages in regions. So certainly from my perspective, what's important is that we look to make sure that we don't pass one size fits all legislation. And this is one of those pieces where we're talking about a New York City labor rate that has been thrust upon a region that simply isn't reflective of New York City. And that's pretty obvious to everyone who lives here. Really, again, from my perspective, it's pretty simple. I want to make sure that public dollars that are used through IDAs are used for the public good. And that's going to mean creating business opportunities for us to attract new businesses and grow current businesses, and also supporting good wages, with respect to the trades folks that are working on those projects.
Thank you. One last question in the question round before we go to summary statements. And we start this question with Mr. Martucci. What is one major issue that you think Republicans and Democrats might come together to address so as to benefit all New Yorkers?
Look, I think the great news is there are a tremendous number of things that Republicans and Democrats can come together to do to benefit New Yorkers. And I think that from my perspective, certainly as a challenger in this race, what I know is that I'm going to be successful. I will be working with a Democratic governor and a Democratic state assembly for sure. And in that situation, we have to approach this from a perspective of compromise and a perspective of working together. What I would say is, one of the biggest challenges facing our state right now is an absolute crisis of public safety. We see this public safety crisis has affected New York City in a tremendous way. It's driving tens of thousands of people out of New York City, which is the economic engine of our state. And it's affecting rural communities all across this state Senate district. It should come as no surprise to anyone who's here. So we have a set of policies that have fueled a cycle of violence in our state, that have created a situation where our criminal justice system has been gutted, and it's difficult for our police to keep our communities safe. So I am confident that with the right voices in Albany, we can address the public safety concerns that really began with radical bail reform changes, dangerous bail reform changes for the good of all New Yorkers, which ultimately will spell down into safer communities and better economic opportunities so that hopefully we can start to attract people back to our state. Our state has led the nation in outmigration. It's not an award that we want to win as a state, but it's unfortunately a place where we lead. So I believe that Democrats and Republicans can come together to solve a public safety crisis in our state, to address huge issues like outmigration and especially struggling New York City and struggling city communities across our state.
Thank you. Senator Metzger, the same question to you. What's that one major issue that you think everyone can come together on?
Thank you, Ray. I'm just going to take a few seconds of my 3 minutes to refer back to the previous question and just make the point. I want to make sure that this is very clear, that when our workers are paid well, they have more money in their pockets to spend in our local economy and on our local businesses. So paying a good, fair wage is really important. As I said at the outset, I've been very proud that my legislation that I've introduced has been passed with wide bipartisan support, nearly 30 bills. And that's because, I served in local government before coming in for a number of years before coming into the state Senate. And one of my primary reasons for running was to bring that community level perspective to Albany and make sure that our rural communities, villages and towns, had a strong voice at the table. And I brought a problem-solving approach to my work, which is really the kind of approach we need in Albany. And we can all agree on these kinds of issues, that we need to make sure that everyone has cell service, that everyone has access to the internet. We want to make sure that our schools are strong and fairly funded. I think we can all get around the idea that New York has to be affordable for people, and that over-relying on local property taxes to fund education is a huge problem. It has been something that the Republican legislature for a long time has not been able to resolve. It's something that we have to resolve. And I look forward to getting that fixed. I think it's going to be one of the top issues, one of the top ways for us to keep people here and keep our local economy strong.
Thank you both. We're at that point in the program for summary statements. And because, Senator, you started that opening round, we open this time with Mr. Martucci. Sir, you have 5 minutes for your summary statement.
Well, again, just first a word of thanks for hosting this and for your partners for putting this on, and the folks that were able to join us this morning, and certainly the folks that are going to join us later on as they watch this recording. So, my message to this group, the chamber group, is pretty simple. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Very simply, I've been in your shoes. I did something that all of you on this Zoom have done, which is take absolutely everything that you have. Every last nickel, every last bit of your energy, every last bit of your internal fortitude, and put it all on the line to start a business. And one of the great things about the state of New York is it attracts people like us. It attracts people who come here with an entrepreneurial spirit. It attracts people who are willing to take a risk because it's a place of great reward. But unfortunately, I look at the direction of this state, and what I know is that the people who follow me won't have the same opportunities I had. And in fact, it will be tremendously difficult for them, people like my children and younger people that are graduating college today, to be successful here in this state because a set of tremendously failed policies. As the owner of a school bus company, I've served our community for years, a decade, in fact, and I saw the daily struggles of our family, the families that call our region home. And, what's clearer now more than ever is that Albany is completely out of touch. I have sat across the desk from employees and worked on ways to help them meet their goals at the company, so that they can earn the number of hours they need to put Christmas under the tree, or so they can get an extra shift to make sure that there's food on the table. I've worked to create jobs in tremendously depressed areas where it seems sometimes impossible to create opportunity. But through hard work and through cooperation, it was my job to make sure that we were successful in places like that, and we were. Again, having done what you do and faced the struggles that you face, I know what you need. What you need is a government who can create good policies to help you be successful. That's our job. And we all want the same thing, which is low taxes, good paying jobs, affordable healthcare, and safe communities. So one of the things that I hope to do is earn your trust and support as we march steadily toward November 3rd, because I'm confident that in Albany, I can bring the expertise and the experience I've gained over the past 10 years as a business owner here in the state of New York to help you do just that and to help our families be more successful. Very simply put, Albany's failed us, and I'm very confident that government can fix the problems that government's created, and together we can turn this around. So thank you all for your time this morning, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
Thank you. Senator Metzger, 5 minutes for a summary statement to you.
When I was young, my family life was turned upside down when my father was laid off. My family struggled throughout my childhood, and I understand the hardships that so many families face today. But I was able to change the circumstances of my life because I had the opportunity to go to a good public school, and I worked hard and I made the most of it, and was then able to go to a good college thanks to full financial aid. I believe the role of government is to make sure everyone has the opportunity to realize their full potential and to have a good quality of life, a clean and healthy environment, safe neighborhoods, good schools, and the infrastructure our towns and villages need, from sidewalks to cell service and broadband. This is why I entered public service. I served for over 10 years in local government in the small town of Rosendale, where I've been raising my 3 sons with my husband, John. I also co-founded and led a nonprofit that fights unfair utility rates and practices. I know how to roll up my sleeves and get the work done for our communities, and I have the energy, experience, and commitment to get results. Because what matters is results. I have worked hard to deliver for the people I represent, and I will continue to fight for our fair share of funding and resources and help us get through this challenging time and build back stronger. Our region has so much natural beauty and rich farmland, but our greatest resource is the people who live and work here. It has been such a privilege to serve as your representative these last 2 years, and I look forward to continuing this work together. Thank you.
Well, thank you both for participating in this morning's forum. Senator Jen Metzger, Michael Martucci, we appreciate your time and during this past hour. We raised a lot of issues. We have a lot more issues that we could talk about. We've gotten many questions from chamber members and other business owners throughout the region over the last several weeks, and we'll have an opportunity after January 1st to talk more about some of those issues. On behalf of the Delaware County Chamber and the Sullivan County Chamber, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us this morning. If you were a participant on this Zoom session, or will be watching this a little bit later on, we are both nonpartisan political organizations. We work to support and advocate for our members. And you can be sure that that Jamie and I will be constant visitors, whoever it is that sits in the state Senate representing the 42nd district come January 1st. So again, thank you for joining us. Please, you'll find this video a little bit later on on our respective Facebook pages, as well as on YouTube. Share it. Early voting starts this Saturday, October 24th. Election day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Please, please, please remember to vote and encourage your friends, family, and neighbors to all do the same. Thanks for joining us. On behalf of the Delaware County Chamber and the Sullivan County Chamber, I'm Ray Pucci. Remember, we are stronger together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Jamie.